Two village idiots with a love-hate relationship.
See, you got fat. See, you still look like a 15-year-old girl, but not hot.
Who can't stop arguing over Oklahoma sports.
You know what, man? Why am I still talking to you?
Come on, we were doing good there, man.
It's the Just Okay Sports Podcast, hosted by Troy and Daryl.
Sooner Nation, Thunder Nation, we are back. This is the Just Okay Sports Podcast. Wonder Village Idiots, Daryl, and I'm here with my brother, Jared J. Rodicus, and you still use the intro. That's the old one and the unedited one. Again, I feel like this is all like a conspiracy.
It's really hard to guilt you into not having a full new intro without playing that one. So I just reverted.
Oh my gosh!
I think Troy would support this decision. And plus, Troy's just here in spirit, right? Right now, he's just here in spirit. And
yes, but big news. We're gonna have some Sunday podcasting coming soon enough, right? We're gonna start trying to hit it on Sundays. That makes it a little bit easier to recap the games and all that kind of stuff freshly. And Troy will probably be with us most of the time on the Sunday evening.
Good to know.
Good to know. So anyways, but yeah, this is Just Okay. This is your first time here. We talk a whole lot of Sooners football. We talk a lot of Sooners softball when that comes around. So a lot of things Oklahoma that way. And then we talk a lot of also Thunder as well. Although we've been a little thin on Thunder lately, we will be talking some tonight and talking through the season. So that's who we are and what we do. And so if you end up liking tonight, please like, subscribe, follow, do what you got to do, and leave a 5-star review. All these things help us, to be able to bring you great content. And I'll give a very good announcement about that here in just a minute. Jared, though, let's start with just how are you, man? How was the day? How was the week? How's life?
Dude, look, today was so dumb. So I end up, so my work has a I don't know, with like formal or whatever, like you have to wear a shirt and tie, right? That's
right.
The dress code. And I was supposed to have a meeting today. They were like, it's got to be in office. We got to have it. It's got to be in office. And I was like, okay, whatever. So like, I've been working remote for like 2 years or so, and got up, got dressed, got my shirt and tie on, get to the office, and literally like 5 minutes before they canceled the meeting.
Are you kidding me?
And I was like, I was so mad. I was like, dude, I literally like got dressed for this. Like I work from home, bro. I can sit there with without pants and nobody can say anything, you know? But yeah, so it's been kind of it's been one of those weeks, but no, I'm good. I mean, I'll tell you one thing. We got that cold front that came through.
Yeah.
We did get a little bit of rain down here. I don't know if you guys got any. But it being I think the highest I got to was 85 today.
Oh.
It was beautiful. So we need a little bit more rain, but other than that, it's, I'm enjoying that we had a little bit of cooler weather.
Absolutely. Yeah. Almost felt cool this morning. Even though it was 75 degrees or something like that this morning, kind of felt cool. Hey, by the way, speaking of needing some rain, right? Rain helps everything, right? Helps the grass look green, makes the flowers bloom, right? All those good things. We've got a little rain coming to the Just Okay Sports Podcast. It's official. I can say it now. I can't say a date because we're working it out, but it is 100% official. We are going to have a guest on the podcast before the season starts. And it is none other than the one and only DeMontre Hurst, former cornerback of the Oklahoma Sooners / Tennessee Titan, NFL player, going to be right here with us. How about that action?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. That's awesome, and I'm really pumped for that. But your segue into that, we need to work on that. But it's fine. It's fine.
It's
but no, it'll be cool. What's funny about that is we just like it was kind of funny because like it was probably like a month or two ago. I think it was before you actually got in contact with him. We were actually talking about him. So was definitely it's definitely cool he's gonna be on. He's definitely he was a very good player back in his OU and his Titan days. So
yeah, absolutely. So I am super stoked about it. And it's going to be cool. He's going to talk to us. Obviously, he remembers the BV days. He's going to give us some Schmitty horror stories. And one of the things I'm really interested to talk to him, he's high school coaching now. And I'm really interested to talk with him about the whole NIL stuff and how it's trickling all the way down into the high school ranks now and how it's impacting recruiting on that front, And so we keep talking about it as fans. We haven't really talked to a high school coach about how that's impacted stuff. So I find that interesting. And
and you also have to look at it in the sense of, the coaches have a huge impact on however you want to view recruiting. Coaches a lot of times have a huge impact on a kid's decision.
Right.
And it seems like there's coaches on both sides of the fence. Like some coaches are like, go chase the bag, and others are like, go to a school that's going to, give you success or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to hear his take because it feels like a lot of the former OU players that have mentioned NIL seem to be like, go where you're going to get to the pros. Like,
mm-hmm.
if you want to get a chance to go to the pros, then go. Like, I don't remember who it was. There was somebody that I just saw, like, it was like a couple weeks ago. It was a former OU player, and he said, he was like, he's like, you should go to a school to get you the pros. And they were like, so you're talking about OU? And he goes, OU, Alabama, Georgia. He's like, any of those schools. Like, it was like he wasn't just singling out OU. It's like there's other schools that are very much in that realm of things, as much as we're Sooner fans, obviously.
Right.
Plenty of other schools that have put a ton of dudes into the league.
No doubt. And, I don't know. I don't know what I would do if I was 18 years old and trying to figure all that stuff out. But again, I will be interested to hear from a high school coach, who deals with that stuff a lot, more about that stuff. And I want to hear more about BV, just from behind the scenes and all that kind of stuff and what he thinks about the team moving forward. So speaking of the team moving forward, we have continued into camp. So let's talk a little bit of Sooners football. And we had a scrimmage this weekend. There's been some news. There's been some reports. You've talked to a few people. I've tried to talk to a few people. Been reading lots of stuff. Any thoughts, kind of takeaways, anything like that from what we've heard about the scrimmage thus far?
Look, it's going to be hard. It's always hard to tell with scrimmages anyway, right? Like with, because, the defense pretty much knows the offense and the offense knows the defense and so forth and so on, right? And we're still early enough that they're rotating a lot of guys, obviously. There's not a lot of positions that have a solidified starter, like quarterback, obviously, and, probably, Eric Gray and some of those guys. But, especially on defense, I feel like it's like open season on who's going to play almost.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhat along the offensive line. But anyway, I think the good thing, like the thing that I keep hearing is like, there's so much young talent, right? Like there's a lot of talent on this roster. And I've even been told, as a matter of fact, I talked to somebody today and they basically said like Schmitty has made guys that were mediocre into great players, like that they've elevated their game, that they went from mediocre to great. Now I didn't get any names. I tried to kind of ask, and I don't think he really wanted to tell me much more than that because it might burn him. But yeah, but again, the young talent, like Gentry Williams was on the mic'd up thing.
Yeah.
And they said he's the fastest. He's been the fastest in practice 2 days in a row. There's just a lot of good things to look forward to, especially for not just this season, but the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. The youth side of it really is fun when you start talking about Robert Spears, Jaden Rowe, Jaron Canick, Gentry Williams. Jaden Gibson, continues to be a name we hear. Nick Anderson continues, Sawchuck Barnes. So, but again, there's always hype with freshmen, I think, because, any freshmen that's not even, whatever. freshmen that stand out tend to turn heads and get talked about a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's what. First of all, here's the biggest positive for me. Anytime there's a scrimmage, one major injury coming out of scrimmage, I feel like not a great thing, but I'll take one, right? If we can go through fall, all the hitting, all the tackling, all the physicality, and go through the scrimmages with one injury, that'd be great. I hate it for TD Roof. I mean, I absolutely hate it for the kid. This is last go round, coach's son, them getting to play together. I mean, all that stuff. Just a rough deal. So that's a bummer. At the same time, I think we can all agree that we were not leaning on TD Roof to carry the defense, right? So it's not some kind of Jeffrey Johnson. That's a scary injury to me, right? Or a Key Lawrence. That's a scary injury to me. TD Roof, it just breaks my heart, right, that it comes out of that. But that's the only major nick up, which is great. So I would say that's my biggest positive news. Negative news, I don't like hearing that there were TD passes dropped or missed. Teddy Lehman talked about that on their podcast, that there were quite a few, not what he said. There were opportunities that the offense had to make big plays where either the receiver dropped the ball or Dylan Gabriel or whoever was playing quarterback just missed them. I don't like hearing that. Those are the plays you got to make, right, or in those situations. I know our super faithful, right, Nemo, Sways, Sunshine, when he listens to this, I am starting to get PTSD about the offensive line. I am beginning to get PTSD on the offensive line. So now, here's what a lot of people are going to say, because a lot of people listen to podcasts like the Oklahoma Breakdown, right, where Teddy Lehman did say this, that talking to people, the offensive line might be the star group of the entire team. Now, that sounds great, right? BV says in his interview the other day, they think they've got 8 or 9 guys that can play right now. And not just, how did BV say it? I'm not just talking about guys that can get out there and get by. I'm talking about guys that can play D1 football. That is Brent Venables' words. Okay, now, Brent Venables knows a lot more than me, et cetera, et cetera. I just don't understand how we can say those things, and then in the exact same podcast, Ted Lehman can go, now, the positive of the defense was the offense really couldn't run the ball on them. Like, I don't understand what's happening here. Like, if you're going to tell me the offensive line is the star-studded, deepest, greatest group in the entire locker room, and then we can't run the football in a scrimmage, like, and by the way,
well,
I think it is fair to say as well that our defensive line is going to be fine. I think it'll be fine. Our greatest group can't go against fine and run the ball. Like, this sounds very familiar to the last 2 or 3 years. That's all I'm saying.
So by the way, I want to get to chat for a second. So Nemo asked, can TD Roof get a medical red shirt? I don't know. I mean, I think he might be able to, but like the way that I understood it, and as a matter of fact, the person I talked to today, I asked him about that, or asked him about his injury, and like he's like, it will be extended period, but he's like, we're talking like, he might miss 3 or 4 games. So if he can still play through the meat of the Big 12 schedule, then I would imagine that he would just play and not take a medical. But who knows? And they're already talking about, oh God, Dark Daryl's here. Daryl's mad they made the O-line great again. Daryl wants to fire BV and take over the program, confirmed. trying to break my hopium. Yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing. I do think, like, I honestly think that our defensive line is going to be much better than what you think.
Okay.
Because, and we're going to get into it in a minute, so I don't want to get too far down that path. But, I do think that there's some guys, I'll just put it this way. I think there's some guys all across that defensive line that now that Schmitty's got a hold of them, they're going to be, again, I think those are the players that are going to be, changed. Now, I'm not saying the offensive line shouldn't be that way too, but at the same time, I do think that our defensive line is going to be much stouter than what you probably anticipate it to be. So them not being able to run, and not only that, to also take into account, BV's a linebacker aficionado, right? Like that's his thing. So the linebackers, we're probably going to see the linebackers already coached so much better than we've seen since BV left, probably, right? And so if that's the case, then you're going to see them plug holes, because that was a huge thing when you watched Grinch or even Mike or whatever. There was guys that just didn't know how to not get caught up in the wash, right? Or just didn't know what hole to plug. And so I think you're probably not going to see nearly as much of that under BV as you did under the previous regime.
Yeah, and I think all those are valid points. And I would I think I would be fine if, again, this is season number 3. We've heard this same crap. 2 seasons ago, we got 8 guys we feel great about and really bad offensive line play. Well, now we got 8 more guys that we feel really good about, and they're killing it, and they know what they're doing, and blah, 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 blah. And then we got the crap show we got last year. And I understand it's different staff, but I'm just like, okay. Like, and then, again, we were hearing the same things, like this offensive line's so good, but then we were hearing, like, Spencer Rattler's getting sacked 5 times in a practice. It's like, okay, I don't understand. Like, if you told me the scrimmage went, well, the defense really got after him for a little bit, but then the offense really got moving and humming and was really running the ball. Okay, then like you said, they know the offense, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. If you're going to tell me again, if you're going to stand in front of a microphone and tell me out of all the position groups on this team that the best star-studded, by far best group, and that was the verbiage used, is the O-line, then I want to hear out of the camp that they are running, like, even if it was, hey, the starters really ran the ball well. I'm good, but that's not what you're hearing.
Well, and again, here's another thing, and I'm trying to be impartial here, because I don't know how good the offensive line is going to be, so I'm not willing to stake my money on that yet.
Right.
But at the same time, the other thing that I think that people all the time forget about is when you're playing in a scrimmage, it's a much slower paced process, right? Like you'll run a play, and if something happens that's not supposed to happen, a lot of times they'll stop and be like, hey, whatever, like they'll choose somebody out or just tell them what they should have done or whatever, right? Like, so it's slower pace. You're not going to have that when you're out there in the game. And if you really went back, now I'm not saying like the Joe Moore award winning offensive line that OU had was just nasty, but at the same time, it was like a lot of games, it was like the first series or two, sometimes it would take them a little bit to get going against the better defensive lines. Sure. And they were kind of that unit that wore down the defensive line. Now you're not going to see that in a scrimmage, right? Like you're not going to see that nearly as much. Now I'm not saying that I'm not trying to say they shouldn't be doing better. I'm just saying there is some defense. I would even say in most scrimmages, like at this point in fall camp especially, the defense has a massive advantage over the offense. But I think it's most so along the defensive line because of what I just said about it not being as fast paced, not being able to really wear them down, those sorts of things.
And you might be right. And again, I don't know. I don't know what that looked like. I don't know what it is. Again, I just know that these are the same kinds of double talk we've heard for 3 seasons.
Well, but it isn't Tebow, right? We're not hearing about but
it's the same offensive staff.
Yeah, but it's BV's the one saying it, right? Like we're not hearing about Ralph Rucker's pushing Dylan Gabriel for number 1 job, right? Like, I get what you're saying, but while I say that, I don't know. We'll see how that pans out, but I'm just not really I'm not willing to try to frame it in the same way because, like I said, that was the previous regime. Lincoln Riley was known for those sorts of antics, right? Like, to me, it's like that was more of a Lincoln than it was Beedenbow or whoever. So
sure, but I mean, yeah, I mean, Beedenbow was the one saying those things too, and so either Lincoln was telling him to say those things, or we're just in rinse and repeat talk.
But here's the other thing that people forget too. Last year, I would argue our offensive line was, I wouldn't say great by any means, but they were good when they were used in the way they should have been used, right? Like it felt like Lincoln would like kind of bounce back and forth between like that GT counter and then, like zone blocking. And it's like one would start working and you'd start running the ball and then he would try to revert back to whatever the other strategy was, right? Like he flip-flopped on that so often that I just, it's like when they were able to execute a certain thing, he would change from it. So, I'm not trying to frame it as like, oh, they were an elite offensive line. They weren't, right? Like they were middle of the Big 12 probably at best, but I do think that hindered them quite a bit.
Yeah, maybe so. And again, we'll have to see. But I am cautiously optimistic. That's where I kind of am right now. So,
well, Stormark says I'm aroused by this talk. Nemo says I'll have faith in BV telling the truth until I'm given a reason not to trust him. Yeah, I mean,
I know, and again, I want to believe it. I just, again, when you're hearing those things, and then when you actually look at results in a setting like that, that's what makes me quiet. But I 100% agree with Nemo. I don't think that BV is a smoke blowing kind of guy. Right. It just sounds weird. And again, it sounds so similar. And like I said, that's why I preface it. It's probably just PTSD, but it just is what it is. So anyways, and then speaking of fall camp, to kind of keep moving us down the road, did you get a chance to watch the All Access episode tonight?
I did not get to watch it. I need to watch it. I worked all day. I went to the gym. I got home. I made dinner, showered, and then I'm here. Okay, so you tell me where in that flow I'm gonna find the time to watch it, and I'll let you know. But I will watch it after the pod.
Actually, let me tell you this: if you've watched the little shorts that they put out on OU Football Every Day on Twitter,
oh yeah,
you've seen everything but about 2.5 minutes of All Access.
Oh, okay, then yes, then I have seen it.
Yeah. So the only thing I will say is they did show, they showed more highlights of what I'm assuming was from the scrimmage and some different practice sections. This is for one. There is no question. Physicality is up. I mean, It was fun to watch. What's Nemo saying?
Oh, no, sorry. Swayze was saying something about Baker, which we'll get to in a minute. Yeah, so look, like, I actually, again, conversation I had today, the physicality, like, I was told this. There's been more physicality so far in this fall camp than there was in all of Lincoln's fall camps combined. like basically he had told me this before. Like, he had told me when Lincoln was there, he was like, dude, like, they would go out there, and he said, like, they was like, they would basically play it. Look, he goes, it looked like they were playing two below. Like, it looked like they were playing two below. Like, there was so little contact. And you watch those clips, and I mean, it's definitely, the physicality is way up, right? Yeah. And that's what you want to see, and that's what BV, and that's the best news is that's BV's going to thrive upon that. Like, that's BV's bread and butter.
Yep.
He's a very physical defense, and he's going to want, and really in Lebby's defense, Lebby's actually got a pretty physical offense to some degree, right? Because he just likes to run it down your throat and then throw the ball over the top. So, right. It's going to be a totally different look this season than we've seen, at least since, really, honestly, probably since BV left. I mean, really, when you really trace it back, the defense has been on a steep decline since BV left, right?
100%.
Grinch, and kudos to, I shouldn't say kudos. Credit to Grinch, he did make it better, right? Like, he did make it better, but it wasn't going to be an elite unit, right? So
I'd agree with that.
And we got Mo in chat. Mo's even here.
Whoa, let's go, Mo. No, I'd agree with that for sure. The other thing that was an interesting that I would say, I told you that you missed like 2.5 minutes. Some of it was they had quite a few of the Soul Mission guys on there, kind of giving little 30-second talks on different things. And this was the statement from Josh Norman that I went, oh, that's some shade, right? So they remember on Twitter they had the I can't remember which former player it was, but he was like, "You're sooner born, sooner bred," and then when I die, I'm sooner dead. That's what this is. This is OU DNA, something like that. They showed that clip. Well, then they showed Josh Norman from Soul Mission, and he goes, "That's the thing about college football is it's a brotherhood and a family, and you come here and you bleed and you sweat and you grind to do this thing, and then when you leave to go do whatever you do, here was what he said, and then someone puts up a wall." And just doesn't allow you to be a part of it anymore. That is hard. And he goes, BV's changing all that and is really allowing us to have ownership in this. And I was like, dude, you want to talk about just a little bit of shade at the Lincoln?
Let me also clarify something. So there's still I still have some, like, I don't want to sound like I'm, best friends with BV or something, but I do still have some sources. But like under Lincoln's leadership or whatever you want to call it, it was so hard to get them to tell you anything. Like you didn't know what they ate for breakfast, right? Because of fear that there would be repercussions. Like if it was found out that, so and so said like, that Billy Bowman was doing great or whatever, it's like that person would either get fired or reprimanded or chewed out or whatever. Like there was such a tougher thing. And like I said, and that's the antithesis of what OU has been. I mean, if you go talk, I can't wait to have DeMontre on, because it's when you go talk to guys like that or you hear them talk about it, they talk about how like, oh man, I still talk to, whoever, like me and Travis Lewis are still tight, or me and Teddy, it's like all those guys are so tight together and they have that incredible brotherhood and they try to share it and they used to come back all of the time. Yeah. And you felt that kind of die off with Lincoln. And so BV revitalizing that is definitely done it. And it's definitely opened up some avenues to, again, I don't think that I'm going to get any, I don't have sources that are close enough that I'm going to be able to tell you, a whole lot. But at the same time, the sources I do have been much more willing to talk than they were previously. Now, like I said, still today, like I couldn't get names on specific things, but before I wouldn't have even heard anything. I've just been heard like, yeah, the defense was okay. Or, whatever. So, yeah,
no, it's definitely more open. So those were the two things that stood out to me from All Access. But it was well done. It was clean. It was fun. I'm excited to see where they go with it through the rest of it. It should be interesting. It was also interesting. They did not touch on the Kale subject at all. So we'll see if that comes up later on or not. It'll just be interesting to see how they do it.
Well, and the other thing I would say too is, and not to say that they didn't have fun before, but it seems like this team's having a lot of fun. Now, I'm not saying like having fun and they're slacking off, but it's like guys are like very interactive with each other that aren't even in the same position group. Like when Gentry was mic'd up, it was like there was like receivers and like everybody was like coming over and messing with them and stuff. And it's like it feels again like the team's much tighter than it has been in the past. Across that, because and what I'd heard before previously was that it's like position groups would kind of form their little clique or whatever, like the defensive backs would hang out with the defensive backs but not the linebackers or whatever, and it's like now everybody hangs out. So
yeah, which by the way did exchange some text messages with Gentry today, friend of the podcast, and told him his mic'd up session was really good and that we were rooting for him and all that kind of stuff. So and he is definitely excited about what's going on. So, well, that's kind of camp, that scrimmage. Let's kind of move into thinking ahead to the fall, which again comes back to some of your stuff and some of what we've talked about. We're doing our position preview each week as we lead up to it. Tonight we're going to start or look at defensive tackles, defensive tackles, offensive line as a whole, and safeties. So let's start with D tackles. What is your thought of what's going to happen here and what it's going to look like for you here, Jared?
Well, in a way, it's kind of like, I mean, I don't even really know, honestly, because we've heard a lot of good things about Jalen Redmond, right? We've heard a lot of good things about Isaiah Coe, even. We've heard a lot of good things about Corey. another friend of the podcast, by the way.
Correct.
And some of these guys, like, again, it's going to be so much different to see them under Schmidt, because it's like, dude, like, still to this day, I think about Perion or IT or any of those guys. If they got a year under Schmidt, it's like, dude, those guys would have been complete and total beasts.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that there's going to be several guys on, like, I think it's going to be a very strong unit, honestly. There's just a lot of guys that I think could really, really shine. But it's going to be really hard to tell until we get to, the first game of the season, because it's so hard for us to know right now, because yes, we know Schmidt's going to make guys better, but how much better are people going to be? So
Right. Yeah, and I would say I think they'll be fine. That's what I would say. I mean, I know Jeffrey Johnson gave us lots of issues last year when we played Tulane, so people are excited about him, but I would also say we had an offensive line that was not very good. So I think he'll do his job. I think he will be a leader. I think he will play hard. And he's, definitely going to start. I think that's great. If Jalen Redmond can stay healthy and can flip the switch to have his motor on every play, I think there's a lot of potential there. But I would also say this: those are your two starters, in my opinion, and I don't see a Perion in either of those guys. I do not see a Perion Winfrey there. I see guys that, again, will do their job, fill their gap, and be there. I don't see those tools anywhere.
I think Redmond is closest to Perion.
Yeah, but I think he's close.
He's not Perion, but yeah,
right.
But also, again, it also goes back to, this is a completely different system.
Yes.
How many times did we see them rush 3 or 4 and then drop everybody else? Like, BV's not going to do that. Not often, right? Like, he's going to bring a linebacker. He's going to bring a safety. The linebackers are going to be there to help the defensive line, not just drop into coverage every single play, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I do think that, given some of those things, I do agree with you. As far as just the defensive tackle in a bubble, probably not as, like, you don't have that elite talent like you had in Perion or even I would say even IT, who, by the way, did actually really well in his preseason.
Yes, he did.
But at the same time, I do think overall the way that it's going to mesh together is going to be better.
It could be. We'll see. And I would say the guy that I'm very interested to watch and have actually started to hear a little bit more rumbling about is Isaiah Coe. I do think that he could have a sneaky good year, just because it's a name no one's talked about, right? We've talked about Kelly, we've talked about Redmond, we've talked about Jeffrey Johnson, heck, and we've talked on this pod a lot about Kelvin Gilliam, who, by the way, was listed in the latest roster 293. Let me say that again. 293, which is insane. This is a guy that was playing at 250, 260 last year.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I've heard really good things about Coe. It's going to be, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's going to be, yes, I do agree with you on who the starters are going to be, but also, like, I think BB's going to rotate quite a bit. And it's like, holy crap, the number of guys that could rise up in that is actually, I think, pretty high.
Yeah.
So, but we'll see.
See, I'm not that high. And again, I always try to look at OU's roster as if we make the playoff. That's what I'm gauging. I do not see anyone, and that's what has me scared about the offensive line. When I look at this defensive line, I don't see Georgia. I don't see Clemson. I don't see Alabama. I don't even know if I see Baylor, right, in this defensive line. So if the offensive line cannot run against them, then if what all of Sooner Nation keeps talking about, I think with BV and blah, 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 we're going to be 11-1, we're going to win the big. Okay, then you're going to go to the playoff and you're going to get smoked, like, if that's true, right? And so that's what I'm trying to compare that D-line to. Now, they could very much surprise me, no doubt, and I hope they do. But, again, I do think it's Redmond and Johnson, and then it'll be interesting to see who comes in behind that. But I do think they're going to have 4 guys that they can play. Right. I just don't know that you have a game changer in there. You're going to have those guys just play solid, fundamental football And then you're going to have to start moving these young guys in or get another transfer that might be able to do something. So that's D tackle. Let's go to the other side of the trenches. Offensive line. What are you thinking is going to come? Because there have been a lot of names dropped, right? Like we know, obviously, we got Anton, right? We know about Matwire or Matower. I never know how to say his name.
The Cal transfer? Is that you talking about?
Yes. Rame and Conjul at center. You got Chris Murray, apparently Savion Bird working at guards. You got Wanye. You got Tyler Guyton. Jacob Sexton has been getting a lot of love as a true freshman, and so is Jacob Taylor.
Yeah.
So, kind of what do you think ends up shaking out here?
I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. Like, I think there's going to be some guys that are going to surprise us, maybe. Because, like, again, I feel like, honestly, the more I think about it, the more we talk on this pod, the more I think bringing Schmitty back was probably the biggest thing compared to any other hire that BV made. Because him getting a hold of guys like Wanye or Savion or whoever, it's like some of those guys, they had it all, except for they just weren't physically where they should be, right? Like that's even what we heard about Wanye. Now Wanye was a little bit of like a head case too for some of that.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's like we heard on time and time again, like, oh, he's just not physically where we want him to be. Schmitty's not going to let you not be physically where you want to be. Like that's just not going to happen. Like, spoiler alert, he's not going to let that happen. It's going to be interesting. I do think, I mean, the guys that I'm looking for the most to kind of surprise people, I think Wanye and Savion. I do actually feel like maybe in the first few games we might see some of those young guys too. I think we might see Sexton or Taylor get out there and get some snaps. But I again, they're getting a lot of love, and that's again goes back to what I said earlier. There's a lot of young talent that's shining right now, and being praised for not only just being talented but having great work ethic. So
yeah. Which, by the way, shout out to Jacob Sexton from right here in my backyard, Deer Creek High School. Met him a couple times here, and I will tell you this. I would not have expected this early for him to have this kind of impact. I mean, just because that's unheard of at O-line, right? Like, his name getting thrown around as much as it is. Really, I kind of thought maybe next fall we might start hearing about him getting in, but he's really taking it by the horns and going, who's roasting me? Go ahead.
No, nobody's roasting you. It's so funny. Swayze says, plot twist, Swenson's coming back to start at left tackle. Yeah, he'd be like a 9th-year senior.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, and then I'm with you, man. Like, look, like I've mentioned earlier, I'm very skeptical about this offensive line, the way they talk about him. What I'm not skeptical about is this. I can still remember all the way back to last year in fall camp when someone asked Bill Bedenbaugh specifically about Savion Bird. Dude, the way he talked about him was different. Now, he didn't say he had it all figured out. He didn't say he really knew, but like things like, I'll never forget, he goes, dude, his punch, in like, you could just tell in BB's eyes, like, I've not seen something like that, right? So that's that tool side that Savion has that nobody else has. And so if he can put it together, man, that could really solidify this offensive line. So that's my guy to watch as a standout. And then, Tyler Guyton is the other guy that continues to get a lot of praise, and we'll see if he works himself in there. So, yeah. And then now, safety. What are your thoughts about safety? Kind of who, like, I think, well, let's just say, can we just agree we know who the starters are?
Yeah, I mean...
Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I do. And one of them I'm extremely excited about.
Okay.
But I want to hear yours first. Let's hear yours first.
Well,
I've been starting at this whole thing. So
I think it's Key and Bowen that start.
Oh, yes.
Or Bowman. Sorry, not Bowen. Bowman.
Yeah.
I think they start.
You're trying to will that into existence, Bowman committee.
Yeah, I know, right? So I think those are your starters. Now, who else gets rotated in there? I'm not sure. I would love to see Mukes out there. I would love to see Gentry or Rowe, but it sounds like they're playing Rowe at corner more than they are at safety. So I don't know. RSJ, I would love to see, but I think you're going to see 90% of the time it's going to be Key and Bowman.
Dude, I mean, look at Bowman in the pictures.
Oh, I know.
That kid is, talk about somebody that Schmitty got a hold of and completely changed. He is a beast. That dude is massive.
He's a bowling ball.
So yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, and Bowman's been getting a very, very high praise from BV.
Yeah, today BV said that right now he might be the star of the entire defense, which I thought was really big praise.
Yeah. Like you said, there are some guys that could rotate in quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, I think that's your starters, right?
Now, oh, sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, and I was going to say Key Lawrence is like that guy that, I mean, obviously he got, well, I think it was all Big 12 honorable mention or whatever. So he already, he's already shown something, right? But again, I think he was a guy that, keep going back to it, getting a little Schmitty workout and playing in a system that's going to utilize him in a more aggressive manner, I think could really elevate him to another level. So I do expect from both those guys, I expect huge things.
Yeah. Now, here's the name that I don't know. I'm not sure where they're really playing him right now because I've kind of heard multiple things. But we talked about it a little bit last week. Justine Harrington is the other name that just keeps coming up time and time and time again. But half the time I hear cheetah/nickel, and then half the time I hear safety. So I don't know if it's just a confusion point because, they basically considered the nickel within Grinch's system safety, right? Like, so I don't know what's happening there. I don't know exactly where, but dude, people are jacked about him.
Yeah, and that's what Swayze even said. Wherever Harrington lands, I think he's going to be a star. I would agree. And again, I think this is going to be an offense and a defense. We've talked about this. That's going to rotate a lot, right? I think you're going to see a lot of guys that are going to get, really your two deep is going to be your starters in most, you know what I mean, as far as playing time goes. So I think Harrington might get it. And that's the thing is they may be trying to make him kind of a flex position, right? Like where he can play any of those three positions. And like, I'm all for it because he's been getting a lot of high praise. And again, somebody that we were just waiting to really put all the pieces together. And it sounds like he has. Yeah,
absolutely. So that's kind of our thoughts on those positions. I mean, out of those groups, I think safety, in my opinion, has the highest ceiling. I'd put offensive line next, and I'd put defensive tackle last as far as the ceiling of how great they can really be. We'll see how it shakes out.
I honestly feel like I really hope Bowman and Lawrence both just ball out because I think this is their last year at OU. If they have a good season, next year we're going to be seeing Gentry or whoever.
Well, Bowman has one more year. He was a true freshman last year.
I thought he was a junior this year.
No, he's a true sophomore. True sophomore. Okay. So
we're just okay sports podcast.
So, hey, what is more than okay is recruiting. So let's dive into those notes a little bit because it has been through the roof as we've talked about multiple times since July. The Sooners get another commitment. This time it is from Jacob Johnson. He is an OK Preps out of Mustang, Oklahoma. He is a 4-star. He is ranked in the top 100. He is the 6th at his position, which, again, depending on what service you look at, some list him as safety, some list him as athlete. If you watch Mustang highlights, he's an athlete. He plays everything for them. 6'3", 183 pounds, can really move, really athletic. This is a big, big get, even though we've known for like 4 months that it was going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, this has been one of those the worst kept secret sort of things.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, it's a big pickup. And this is something we also like it to highlight for him. Lincoln did not really seem to have a focus on OK Preps, right? Like he didn't. Not to say that they didn't get some okay prep guys and stuff like that, but it's like overall, there's a lot of guys that went out of state to play, right? Yep. And so I do think BV is going to make that a point of, walling off the state of Oklahoma, and getting because like, that's the thing is like Oklahoma as a whole, like as a high school football state, is not like there's not a ton of elite talent. Like you're not going to have 10 5-stars in Oklahoma, right?
Right.
But you got a very good chance to get a lot of 4, and you might get a 5-star or 2, and obviously we're seeing that. So, oh wow! And by the way, sorry, just another recruiting note. Swayze says Notre Dame just lost their top recruit an hour ago. Their class is about to fall apart. Bowen is on the way, in my opinion.
Who? Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, that's huge news. Which we were going to get to that. So we can give a little more detail to that, even though like I don't want to pretend like we know what's going on with Bowen because we don't. But we can at least give a timeline, and we mentioned it last week, so we'll mention that again. So, but yeah, recruiting's up, and then again, the other big news that came out this week is Oklahoma commit Adeboje Adebarwe is how you say the last name. I don't know how to say the first name. But Adebarwe got moved up to a 5-star this week as well. That is a composite 5-star. He got bumped up. So now OU with 2 5-stars in the class.
Keon Keeley, number 3 overall player, I believe, is now Bama bound, is the rumor.
Wow. So that'll be interesting. And again, that leads into Bowens and Yates, which Yates is an LSU commit. Bowens is a Notre Dame commit. They both go to the same high school, which happens to be the same high school as Jackson Arnold. It has been rumored forever that they are talking and heavily considering OU. I'm still saying within a week to 10 days, at the very latest, there will be an announcement of whether or not they are sticking with their schools or if they are opening up their commitment. So, and by the way, Bowens also just got his composite 5-star rating as well. So if they do land Bowens, that's their 5th 5-star in the class.
Yeah, and we didn't see that under Lincoln. As much as people, praised Lincoln, we didn't see that under Lincoln too much.
Unless it was a wide receiver class. So
yeah, unless it was wide receiver. But yeah, Bowens, I mean, I don't know about Yates, right? I think Bowen is the more likely. If I had to pick one, I'd say Bowen is probably the more likely to flip. But both of them could be because, like I said, Jackson Darnold, like he blows them up on Twitter.
Don't call him Darnold. Do not call him Darnold.
Oh, sorry, Jackson. My bad. But he's blowing them up on Twitter all the time, constantly. He's like you're not gonna do that if there's not a shot, right?
Yeah.
Like, if they were like, dude, I'm not going to OU, it's like he's probably not doing that. Like he's probably not recruiting them openly.
Yeah.
But yes, Jackson Arnold is. Yeah, I mean he's the lead recruiter for this class. So
yeah, absolutely.
He's very active on Twitter and other places.
And then we'll know here in about 10 days as well. Makari Vickers, again, one of the worst kept secrets on planet Earth. Anybody that's turning in a crystal ball in the last 3 months on him has turned it in for OU, including Steve Wilfong. So as we like to say, he has been fonged to OU. Mm-hmm. It seems like a done deal there. Again, another very highly rated 4-star. Now, here's what's interesting, Jared. Okay, so when we look at the class currently, Jackson Arnold, 14. Adebarwe, 35. Petaway, 53. Caden Green, 76. Jacob Johnson, 87. Derek LeBlanc, 96. Samuel Omasigo is all the way up to 110 now. Now, when he signed with us, he was like at 220. He's up to 110. He is 10 spots away from being in the top 100. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and throw Omasigo in there. Okay, that is 7 players in the top 100. Think about what we've got left in this class. Vickers, top 100. David Hicks, top 100. Bowens, top 100. Yates, top 100. They're also in on, oh my gosh, the Nebraska kid. Malachi Coleman, top 100, right? Like, you start like looking. Oh, Jordan Renaud, top 100. I mean, if they land all these guys that it feels like they are right there to land, we're talking possibly 14 top 100 players in this class.
Well,
that is insane.
You know, and this is a conversation that I was having with somebody. Well, it was yesterday. We were having a conversation about it, and I said, I think the reason recruiting is taken off like it has is not to diminish. Like I said, we can argue all you want. Lincoln is a good recruiter, right?
100%.
At the same exact time, I think that there had to be some sort of lack of communication or wishy-washiness or whatever however you want to frame it, right? And I think with BV, it's like, look, here's your offer. If you want it, you got it. But I'm not gonna take it unless you are done,
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, honestly, I think especially with the NIL being the way it is, and a bunch of other things that are like all these outside things that have been thrown into recruiting, I honestly think kids are just drawn to that. Like they don't want to, if you give me, because I mean, BV said if I give you an offer, it's committable. Right. And how many times have we seen Bama or, Georgia or Clemson or wherever that guys they've had to turn away commits because of things like that. And BV's not going to do that. So I think that's why it's taken off. But yeah, it's an insane class. This could be, a generationally good recruiting class for OU.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be really fun. Which would be a major flex after a guy. Now, flex is something different. Before we get to the flex, you said something really well, and we've tried to be very fair once we got out of our feelings, 3 months after Lincoln, did his stuff. He is a good recruiter. And I think, as much as people keep wanting to go, well, look at how BV, we also need to remember, and we've got to give a little bit of credit to as well, that the university has stepped up to give BV the support he needs to be able to pull this class off. Now, I'm not saying that, all that to say, I don't know what Lincoln's recruiting classes would have been if he had 35 off-field analysts and all that stuff that can help in the recruiting game, right? That all the different things. And look, this was a part of why Lincoln left, was because those things were going to happen, but we're going to take our time to get there. Once Lincoln left, it kind of lit a fire under everybody, and it's like we get it all now, okay? And so
it's kind of like Lincoln. The whole Lincoln saga is like Pearl Harbor, right? Like in that it galvanized. Wow. Yeah, I went there. Was that too soon? But yeah, it galvanized, the university, it galvanized the alumni base, it galvanized the donors, everybody that was like, oh, we'll get there. It's like immediately it's like, whatever we need in the war chest, like whatever you need, you got it.
Yeah.
And like we were talking about earlier in chat, also the LED lights, which I did think it was pretty funny because somebody, I don't remember who it was, I saw on Twitter that's like we're ever going to be able to see these lights this season with this joke of a conference. But yeah, the stadium lights, they're doing like light shows and all kinds of crazy strobing things, and they posted some videos and stuff. And so yeah, it's going to be very it's very much a different feel as far as just the university as a whole and the athletic department as far as especially pertains to football. So yeah, again, I still think that there's negative things that have come out about Lincoln since he's left, right? Yes. Or whatever. But at the same time, it's like, look, guys, the class that they had last year, some of these guys, Gentry and
RSJ, Jaden Rowe, yeah,
like all those guys we wouldn't have if it wasn't for Lincoln. Right. So, take that for what you will. I'm definitely still not a Lincoln fan. I hope they go 0-12 this season. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like he did a good job. So
yeah, he had his moments. But who does a great job is BV. So did you see the tweet where BV super flexed?
Yeah, and it's just
wow. Oh my gosh. All right, so this is from TJ Eckert of KTUL. which is the sports channel or the local news channel out of Tulsa. And I'm going to read the whole tweet as it is to give him the credit. So again, this is from TJ Eckert, who tweeted this out. Says, nice little flex here from Sooners head coach Brent Venables. Asked about the grind of fall camp and how he can set Oklahoma up for success. BV said, having coached in half of the national championships in the last 20 years, there's a blueprint. I mean,
yeah,
bro.
Like,
oh
dude,
my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, he's not wrong.
No.
And again, it goes back to when he got to Clemson, he revolutionized Clemson. Right? Like, people forget that, I think. Like, people, and that's what's kind of funny to me is I was like, people want to talk about all the great players that they had at Clemson on the offensive side of the ball, because that's what, that's where football is sexy generally, is on the offensive side, right? But it's like, dude, they wouldn't have won their national titles if BV didn't have a completely dominant defense.
Yeah.
So he not only did he coach in half the national championships, but he played a major part in the ones that were won.
Oh, 100%.
And the only reason, I would even argue, the only reason that Clemson was good was that, last season, was because of BV. If it wasn't for BV, I don't know that they would have made it. I don't know if they would have made bowl eligibility, to be honest with you, because their offense was just terrible.
Yeah, he got them where they needed to be. There's no question. Without BV, I don't know that Clemson is what it is today. Now, look, that's not to take away from Dabo. That's part of what makes Dabo great. He stepped up to pay BV and understood what he was getting in BV. So, but they needed each other to get that program where it needed to be, and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. It was good stuff. But yeah, to flex on, I've been in half the national championships in the last 20 years, was pretty awesome. That definitely needs to go on a banner somewhere. So,
wait, real quick, before we get off football, because I know we're rolling into Thunder here in a minnte.
Yep.
I do want to highlight two things. One, did you see that General Booty has merch?
Yes, I did see that. And
I might actually have to pick some up. I was like, dude, the kid's gonna make a killing because it's so good. So I was like, I might actually order one. But also, we were talking about this earlier. Baker is, I don't know how they haven't even named him the starter. Everybody seems to have basically said he's going to be the starter week one. And not only that, it's been hilarious. All of the rave reviews that Baker's getting from his teammates. Right. And, like Cleveland trying to frame it as, well, Baker was toxic. It's like, bro, did you see the clip of him mentoring Matt Corral? Like, he was just like, hey, man, like, do this, like, this is what he means. You know what I mean? Like, he absolutely took him under his wing. It's like a toxic quarterback's not going to do that.
Right.
And not only that, you've had defensive players and offensive players that have come out and been like, dude, that's my dude. He's got our back. We love that guy. So
heck, even OBJ, first preseason game said go shine, which maybe he was being sarcastic with that, but
here's the thing. I still feel like the beef between OBJ and Baker was a little bit blown out of proportion, because OBJ's dad played a huge role in that more than OBJ did. Not to say OBJ didn't say some stuff he shouldn't have said, but at the same time, it was heat of the moment. The franchise is obviously a joke and how it's managed and everything else. Mm-hmm. So I think at some point they may have broke bread and said, like, look, it was what it was, whatever. And they're probably good friends still. And since then I haven't, like, OBJ hasn't bashed Baker, since all that went down. So, I think that was more OBJ's dad, personally.
That's the thing. We'll never know. May very, very well have been. So let's move on to some Thunder talk, so we can start winding this thing up and getting it down. So big news that came out was the schedule has been released. And the biggest news for Oklahoma City fans is that the Thunder will have 4 nationally televised games this year, which I know that's not a lot, but considering they had like 1 last year, that this is still a lottery team. It is by far the youngest team in the NBA. That is a win that you no longer have to go to Bally Sports for 4 games. So big win there. But the other thing that came out about the schedule that I just saw today, and this is actually courtesy of our man Troy himself. Of course, nobody ever knows for sure, but the thought process that the Oklahoma City Thunder may tank for one more year is in full effect because the number one toughest schedule in the West, Oklahoma City Thunder, have rated the toughest schedule of anyone in the West. So have fun with that.
Yeah, I mean, my boy Noob's in here. Wait, who took him out? Nemo. I'm sorry. Noobs came in here talking trash about the Thunder and talking about the Sixers, and Nemo timed him out, so I deleted his message. Look, this is a team, like, you have the Sixers that are a really good team, Noobs. I will give you that. But the Thunder are like the up-and-coming team. I think that's why they're getting – lottery teams typically don't get a lot of they don't get a lot of love when it comes to nationally broadcast TV, but this team has got a lot of, like, people are already, even outside the organization, are raving about Chet. Obviously, Giddey has shown that he could be a star. SGA is a known quantity at this point. It's like, really, when you look at this roster, and obviously you got guys like Dort that's very underrated. So some of these things that some of these guys they've got on this roster are huge. So I know that there's talk about them tanking, and I get that, but I don't feel like that's what's going to happen. But we'll see. Yeah,
and we're going to talk about that in a second. Speaking of guys on the roster, I've been given a challenge for tonight's podcast from our one and only Swayze, if he is still in chat. And it was that I have to come up with 5 nice things to say about Poku. Because I don't believe that Poku is a viable option for this team at all, other than to trade for a second-round pick if we're lucky. I think the Poku experiment was fun to try while we were down. It is time to move on and go. But all that to say, I can find 5 nice things to say about Poku. So we're going to run through these very, very quickly within this this time frame.
Like he's got pretty eyes. He's got a good personality.
He has neither of those, actually. He has none of that. His personality is awful. There is definitely nothing attractive about Poku whatsoever. But here is one positive. He is extremely tall. If you ever need to change a light bulb or anything out, the number one thing about Poku that is a nice thing to say, he is really, really, really tall. So if you need help on the top shelf, whatever it is, you want to go to your guy Poku, right? Number 2, while Poku is not an all-star, he is better than 99.8% of all human beings on planet Earth at basketball. Even if he cannot play in the NBA, he is better than all of us, which is part of the reason that podcasting is really fun, because we get to come in here and pretend like we could do these things.
You said 99.8%
of planet Earth?
Yeah, that's like what, like 30 billion or 30 million people?
Yeah.
There's 30 million people better than Poku.
Probably. Yeah, probably so. Somewhere in that neighborhood. So, yeah, so he's better than most of planet Earth at basketball, regardless of what we think about him on this roster, right? Number 3, I should say, because of his skill set, he has changed his family's life forever. Did you see how depressed they all were when he got drafted? Like, can you imagine now that they have millions of dollars, that they are actually kind of happy? I think he brought some kind of joy to his family after he has now remained in the NBA and has changed his life moving forward financially forever. I got to believe that for sure. So that's number 3. Number 4. When you're that skinny, you get to eat whatever you want. I think that's number 4, that Poku can eat whatever he wants and he'll never be fat, because apparently they've had him on a nutrition and weight plan for 2 years, and I think he's gained 2 pounds. So the guy's metabolism is really, really, really high and really, really, really up there. Number 5, because of his name, he will forever be remembered in Thunder lore. If he never plays another minute, Poku will be talked about for generations just because of his name. Poku. That alone will make him a legend. So can you imagine never really doing anything other than lowering your franchise's chance for a first-round pick, which is what Poku did last year in the last game of the season, that you would still be a legend all because you have a really cool name? That's a pretty good legacy. That's pretty good. Most of us don't get that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, yeah, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I guess those are nice things. I mean, 30 million, or I don't even know what that math may be totally off, but I think it's like 30 million people.
What is there, 7 billion in the world, right?
Yeah, 7 to 8 or something.
Okay, so I'll do some calculator work. So, and work on that. So here's my question while I'm working on that. I'm going to say that this team this year is going to play with all of its arsenal and let them really play and turn them loose for about 35 games.
14
Okay?
million, by the way, 14 million, sorry.
14 million. So 14 million or better than Poku. Yeah, I needed to up the ante a little bit maybe there, but it's pretty close. Not by much. I think if you shaved $1 million off of that, I think you'd be in the ballpark. But I definitely put $1 million too many in there. There's no question. So through 35 games, Jared, what does this team have to be at to convince the front office to say we're going for it and we're not going to tank? And where do you think this team has to be to solidify 100% for sure that they are in tankathon mode?
Well, first of all, I want to acknowledge that Noobs came in here trying to pump up the Thunders. He said, go Sixers, Thunder will be a lottery team, and he resubbed. So I appreciate the resub, but now Swayze and Nemo are both eviscerating him in the Philadelphia 76ers.
Oh, my gosh.
Philly is a full of scrubs who will finish at the bottom of the East. Philly is the first city to give an active player crippling depression. And also, real quick before I get into your question, Swayze wants to know, ask Daryl, who's better, Poku or Kyle Singler?
Singler. Yeah, 100%. Look, Singler lost his three-point shot when he got here, but he actually had a 5-year streak of being one of the better three-point shooters in the NBA. We have yet to see that from Poku. So, yes, Singler better.
So, okay, so your question, though, is through 35 games, like, what does the record need to be for them to, like what's the break, your tipping point for them pushing for the playoffs, and what's the point for them going to the or tanking, trying to get a lottery pick? I would say 20, like about 20 wins, right, out of 35. Like, I think you're going to have to be above 500. I think if you're 20 and 15, then it's like you're probably, you're the bottom. You're going to be the bottom rung of seeds for the playoffs. At that point, you may be in play-in, but at the same time, it's like I think that's probably where they would start pushing, because I do think they want to try to make it to the playoffs, right? Like, and I personally think they have a roster to do it. As far as make the playoffs, I don't think they're a championship team as it sits right now. But if these guys develop like we really feel like they're going to develop, they're not far from it, honestly. They're not, as far as timelines, a year or two of good, solid basketball, of actually not tanking and actually trying to make the playoffs, could make this team so much better.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm with you. I was going to say even like, I think as long as they're over 500. In other words, like 18 and 17, I think that I think they might push for it and go for it. I don't think with the schedule that they have that they're going to get there. And I do think the front office very much wants to tank one more season. I think they want to see what this team looks like through 35, but I think they want to tank one more season because this next draft is supposed to be so deep and so loaded. And with all the assets you have, I do believe this as well. I believe they believe that Chet, Giddey, Shea, and Dort, I think those 4 guys they are locked in with. So if you can tank one more year, take all these assets you have, move up in the top 5 of this draft, at that point I think they're ready to just go for it and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I still think I don't think they're going to actively come out of the gate and start trying to tank. Is what I'm saying. Like I said, I do think, like you said, about midway through the season is when we're going to see the decision made whether we start throwing games or we start, playing our butts off to get to the playoff.
Yeah, and which that's kind of been their MO the last few years, right? Because they have to play about 35 games to see what they have, right?
Mhm.
It took about 35 games for us to go, oh, okay, Giddy's he's got some game, right? The first couple were a little rough, and then he got adjusting, got better and better. Same with Dort, like playing a season with Dort, like showed you what Dort was, right? Showed you what you had in him.
Basketball is such a streaky game in the sense of like you'll see a guy that has 10 great games and then falls off and like has 10 terrible games, right?
Right.
And really the great players, like determining how great a player is a lot of times is how quick they bounce back from a bad game. Because it's like you play 84 games in a season, right? Like you're going to have bad games in that 84. It doesn't matter if you're LeBron James or whoever. You're going to have bad games. And so it's how quick can you bounce back? And it's like you said, that's why you need about half the season. 35 isn't quite half, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's the biggest thing. And then like we've talked about, just keep your eyes open for trades, moves, and cuts. This team, I believe, still has 4 more people that they have to cut from its roster to be able to move on and be official. And I believe they still have about a month and a half to pull that off. So be interesting to keep your eyes on that and see what they do as they move forward. And it's kind of crazy to think they've got a guy in their 30s on this roster right now, and they are still the youngest team in the NBA. And it's a 99% chance that Derek Favors will not be on this roster at the start of the season, which will move this team to by far the youngest team in the NBA. So it could be a fun run here the next couple years. So that's the sports side of it. We always end with a little bit of entertainment talk. Anything going on in your world entertainment wise that you need to update us on?
Let's see. I finished Sandman, finished Lock and Key. I also finished I watched the Manti Te'o.
Very nice.
About his whole catfishing thing.
Yeah.
And all that. That was actually pretty interesting. I was like, I even saw Kenny Stills tweet. He was like, they must have really given him the bag for him to retell that story.
Yeah.
But it was really good. And then another one that I've been watching is it's called I Shot My Dad or I Killed My Dad or something like that.
What the heck?
And it's a story about a kid that was he's 16 or 17 or something, and said like basically he called the cops and was like, I just shot my dad. And like they end up investigating because it's like he fully admits to it. Like he doesn't, and like they were like he was very cold. He didn't know, like it was really weird. And as you kind of get into it, you start like where I'm at in it right now. It's like it was a very weird situation this kid was living in. And it was it's way like the twists and turns in it are pretty insane. But it's pretty good. But yeah, I mean, and then obviously we've got House of Dragons is dropping this weekend.
Yeah, baby.
Westworld just finished, and I don't know how to feel about it. Like I'm trying to be the guy that's like holding on to hope that it'll be great, because like Westworld season 1 was so fantastic. Like it is season 1 of Westworld is some of the best TV I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
And they've just never captured that magic from that point, right? Like it's kind of gotten like way more convoluted and like not to say that you shouldn't have philosophy in the shows, but it's like way more philosophical and like deeper meaning and all this other stuff. And yeah, it wasn't really like that. Season 1 was just really good. But yeah, I mean, House of Dragons is coming out, and I think we're only a few weeks away from the Lord of the Rings one coming out.
Yeah. There's stuff coming. I haven't really been watching. I've been trying to keep up with Big Brother. That's something that we always watch through the summertime. So we've been trying to keep up with that, which has been an interesting season. And then I am getting all jacked up. There is a new extreme version of Alone coming out on History Channel where,
about that, yeah.
Like I talked about, did I talk about that last pod already?
Oh, you did talk about Prey, and I did see Prey too, by the way. It was really, really good.
Yeah. See, Prey was legit. It was not bad. But yeah, I'm excited about the Alone series. That's a whole other thing, man. And it's cool because this year it is whoever makes it a certain amount of days all get a $500,000. So if they make it, I think it's 50 days, they get a $500,000. But the difference is they normally drop them at their sites at the end of September, start of October. They're going to be dropping them at the end of October, start of November. So they're dropping them in the middle of winter, and they've got to hunt, build a shelter, all that stuff as winter is actually upon them, as opposed to having that kind of month to prepare and get ready for it and stock up. So it should be really interesting.
Also, Nemo asked, when is Yellowstone coming back? I think like November. I thought they announced the date as like November or something.
Dude, I have no idea. No clue.
But I am excited for Yellowstone to come back. Cobra Kai had a new trailer come out. Looks pretty interesting. I don't know if you've watched the Cobra Kai stuff.
Oh, yeah. I've watched Cobra Kai series. Last season was
Yeah, it was kind of, yeah. But this one looks pretty good. So pretty excited for that, I guess. But, and then like what She-Hulk did She-Hulk already come out or is it coming out?
I don't know about that one either. Have not been.
There's a lot. We're getting into that. We're getting into that point of the year where like, because usually when you get into the fall and winter months, that's when movies and TV shows start dropping because everybody's indoors more, right? Yeah, there's going to be some pretty cool stuff coming out. But we'll see how some of this go. Like I said, but Prey, by the way, Prey was really good. When I saw the trailer, there's been so many bad Predator movies.
Yes.
That I was like, oh, come on. You know what I mean? Like, but I watched it and I was like, dude, this is actually really, really good.
Yeah.
So I was pretty impressed with it. And I did like, there was a lot of callbacks and, things like, they definitely tied the first and second movie, especially tied it very close to this one. I really enjoyed it. But
yeah, it was a good one for sure. So plenty of stuff going, and even She-Hulk coming if you're excited about that, which I'm not, but give me all the Marvel stuff. I'm down for it. So anyways, but again, this is us. So again, we're always going to talk Thunder. We're always going to talk Sooners. We hope you've enjoyed it. We hope you've given you some information that you like. Again, be looking in the next week or two for Devontre Hurst to join us on the podcast and give us some behind-the-scene takes and looks at things. And again, the thing that helps us get those kinds of things is your likes, your subscriptions, your comments on the podcast. So make sure and do all that. Also, don't forget to look for Just Okay Sports merch on Redbubble's website. That helps support this podcast, helps us make it better. So we'd love for you to do that. We've got our Dylan Gabriel merch on there. We've got our Just Okay merch.
Pick that up. He's a big UCF fan, so definitely pick up the Dylan Gabriel stuff.
And there's the Lincolnite as well. There's the Lincolnite shirts that are still there for those of you that are still salty over Lincoln. So check all that stuff out. We're having a great time. We hope you are too. I'm Daryl.
I'm J-Rod.
And we will talk to you guys later. Bye, Baker.
Cha-ching, it's on your money ball. And you can unhit the leg. Put the ponies in.